The prison ship disappeared into the dark sky without slowing down. Ethan Reed stood alone in the middle of a white frozen wasteland, staring at the fading blue light of the engines above him. Within seconds, the ship became nothing more than a small dot hidden behind heavy clouds. Silence covered the planet again. Cold wind slammed into Ethan's body like a hammer. Snow blew across the endless ice fields, and the temperature dropped so fast that his damaged survival suit started warning him with flashing red lights. Heat level critical. Ethan pulled the torn collar closer around his neck and forced himself to move. Standing still meant death. Frostfall 7 was known across the outer systems as a dead world. No cities. No rescue stations. No life. Only ice. The Nova Dominion had sent prisoners there before, but nobody had ever returned. Ethan walked through deep snow while carrying a small metal case containing his only supplies. 3 packs of nutrient paste. A weak thermal blanket. A broken mapping drone. And an old fabrication tool that barely worked. The Dominion expected him to die in a few hours. But Ethan had spent most of his life repairing cargo stations on dangerous mining worlds. He understood machines, tunnels, generators, and survival systems better than most soldiers. It was the only reason he was still alive after the first night. The wind became stronger as darkness slowly covered the planet. Ethan could barely see ahead of him. Ice dust filled the air and froze onto his eyelashes. Then he noticed something. A metal tower. Half buried under snow. Ethan quickly rushed toward it. The tower leaned to one side, almost crushed by thick layers of ice, but a faded warning symbol was still visible near the base. Mining Site 14. His heartbeat increased. "Please still work," he whispered. He brushed snow away from the entrance hatch and forced it open with both hands. Rusted metal screamed loudly before the hatch finally moved. Warm air did not greet him inside. Only darkness. But darkness was better than freezing outside. Ethan climbed down a narrow ladder into the abandoned mining station. His small flashlight flickered as he looked around. Broken pipes lined the walls. Frozen tools covered the floor. Dust and ice coated everything. The station had been abandoned for years. Maybe decades. He sealed the hatch above him and sat down against the wall, breathing heavily. His hands shook from the cold. For the first time since arriving on Frostfall 7, Ethan allowed himself to think about what had happened. 3 weeks earlier, he had worked as a repair engineer aboard a Dominion transport station near Mars Colony. His life had been simple. Fix damaged cargo systems. Sleep. Work again. Then an explosion destroyed one of the station's reactors. The Dominion blamed him immediately. No investigation. No chance to defend himself. Someone powerful wanted the accident hidden, and Ethan became the perfect target. Exile was cheaper than a public trial. Ethan clenched his fists. They wanted me dead. The weak lights on his suit flickered again, pulling him back to reality. Anger would not keep him alive. Heat would. He searched through the station carefully, opening frozen lockers and broken storage boxes. Most supplies were useless, but after nearly an hour, he found an old portable generator hidden beneath a collapsed shelf. Hope returned instantly. The machine looked damaged, but not destroyed. Ethan connected wires from his fabrication tool into the generator's side panel. Sparks jumped across the metal surface. The machine coughed loudly before falling silent again. "Come on." He hit the side of the generator with a wrench. Nothing. Then he noticed frozen fuel lines blocking the system. Ethan spent the next hour melting the ice with the emergency heating coil from his suit. His fingers became numb during the work, but finally the fuel started moving again. He pressed the ignition button. The generator roared to life. Warm air slowly spread through the station. Ethan laughed quietly in relief. It was the first good thing that had happened in weeks. That night, he slept beside the generator while snowstorms screamed above the station. But the next morning brought new problems. The generator fuel would not last long. If he wanted to survive, he needed power. Real power. Ethan explored deeper into the abandoned tunnels beneath the station. The deeper he went, the warmer the air became. Strange. Frozen planets were not supposed to have warm underground tunnels. His flashlight revealed old mining tracks leading farther into darkness. Some sections had collapsed completely, forcing him to climb over broken metal beams and icy rocks. Then he found the bodies. 3 miners still wearing frozen work suits sat against the tunnel wall. Their faces were pale blue beneath cracked helmets. Ethan looked away quietly. Whatever happened here had happened fast. Beside them lay several broken drilling machines pointed toward a sealed rock wall. Curious, Ethan examined the area closely. The wall shimmered faintly. He recognized them immediately. Thermal core crystals. Rare. Extremely valuable. One small piece could power an entire colony generator for months. His breathing slowed as realization hit him. Frostfall 7 was not worthless. The Dominion had lied. This planet contained enough energy resources to make entire corporations rich beyond imagination. Ethan carefully removed a small crystal from the wall using a mining cutter. The moment the crystal touched his glove, warmth spread through his hand. Real heat. A smile slowly appeared on his face for the first time since exile. This changes everything. Suddenly, a loud growl echoed through the tunnel behind him. Ethan froze. Heavy footsteps crunched across the icy ground. Slowly, he turned around. A massive white creature emerged from the darkness. Its body looked like a frozen wolf, but twice the size of a human. Sharp ice-covered teeth lined its mouth, and pale blue eyes locked directly onto Ethan. The beast growled again. Ethan's heart pounded. He grabbed the mining cutter tightly while backing away toward the crystal wall. The creature lowered its head and prepared to attack. Outside, another storm shook the surface of Frostfall 7. Deep underground, Ethan Reed realized surviving the planet would be far harder than he imagined. The white creature rushed forward with terrifying speed. Ethan jumped aside just before its claws smashed into the frozen ground. Ice exploded across the tunnel walls. The mining cutter shook violently in his hands as fear rushed through his body. The beast growled again and turned toward him slowly. Its pale eyes never blinked. Ethan backed away carefully. He knew he could not fight the creature directly. It was too large and too strong. The narrow tunnel behind him offered only one escape route. Then he noticed something above the creature. Loose support beams. Old mining tunnels were unstable. One strong impact could bring the ceiling down. Ethan tightened his grip on the cutter. "Come on," he whispered. The creature charged again. At the last second, Ethan rolled aside and slammed the mining cutter into the weak support beam beside him. Sparks flew everywhere. Metal snapped loudly. A deep cracking sound echoed through the tunnel. The ceiling collapsed instantly. Huge chunks of ice and rock crashed onto the creature, burying it beneath tons of frozen debris. The entire tunnel shook violently as dust filled the air. Ethan coughed and stumbled backward. Then silence returned. The creature was trapped. Breathing heavily, Ethan looked down at the glowing crystal still in his hand. Its soft blue light reflected across the icy walls. That crystal saved his life. Over the next several days, Ethan worked non-stop inside the abandoned mining station. He connected the thermal crystal to the old generator system, and for the first time in years, warm air flowed through the tunnels again. The station slowly came back to life. Lights flickered on in empty hallways. Frozen doors opened. Old heating pipes warmed the underground rooms. Ethan renamed the station Wintergate. Not because it looked strong or important, but because it was the only gate between life and death on Frostfall 7. Every day became a battle against the planet itself. Deadly storms covered the surface with fresh ice. Temperatures dropped low enough to freeze exposed metal in seconds. But Wintergate survived. Ethan repaired water systems using melted ice from underground thermal vents. He cleaned old sleeping rooms and rebuilt broken air filters. He even managed to reactivate a small hydroponic farming unit hidden deep inside the station. Tiny green plants began growing beneath artificial lights. It was the first living color Ethan had seen on Frostfall 7. Weeks passed. Then one night, Wintergate's outer sensors detected movement outside. Ethan grabbed a metal pipe and carefully opened the main hatch. 3 figures collapsed into the snow near the entrance. 2 men. 1 woman. All wearing damaged flight suits. Their shuttle had crashed during a storm. The youngest man could barely stand. Frost covered his beard, and his lips had turned blue from the cold. "Please," he whispered weakly. "Help us." Ethan looked at them silently for a moment. A few weeks earlier, nobody had helped him. The galaxy abandoned him here to die. But Ethan stepped aside and opened the hatch wider. "Get inside before you freeze." The travelers nearly collapsed from relief. Inside Wintergate, the warm air shocked them. The woman stared around the station with disbelief while Ethan handed them heated water packs. "How is this place running?" she asked quietly. "Hard work," Ethan answered. The older man introduced himself as Sam. The woman's name was Nora, and the younger pilot was Ben. They had worked as cargo runners before their ship crashed during a smuggling route across the outer systems. At first, they planned to leave once the storms calmed. But storms on Frostfall 7 rarely calmed. Days turned into weeks. Then another damaged ship arrived. Then another. Word slowly spread across hidden channels and outlaw frequencies. A man was surviving on Frostfall 7. Not only surviving. Building. More desperate people began appearing at Wintergate. Exiles. Smugglers. Refugees. Miners. Runaways. People forgotten by the rest of the galaxy. Ethan gave them shelter, but he was careful. Every newcomer had to work. Some repaired tunnels. Others cleaned systems or expanded underground rooms. Wintergate slowly grew larger. Old storage halls became sleeping quarters. Empty mining tunnels turned into workshops and trade areas. For the first time in years, voices and laughter echoed through the frozen station. One evening, Ethan stood beside the thermal generator while Sam examined energy readings on a damaged screen. "These crystal reserves are massive," Sam said quietly. "Do you understand what this means?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Power. More than power," Sam replied. "People would kill for this energy." Ethan already knew that. That was why he kept Wintergate hidden beneath storm-covered mountains. But hiding would not last forever. As the settlement grew, problems grew with it. Food became harder to manage. Water systems needed expansion. Some newcomers fought over supplies and sleeping areas. One night, 2 smugglers nearly killed each other over thermal batteries. Ethan broke up the fight himself. Afterward, he gathered everyone inside the main tunnel hall. Nearly 40 people stood around him beneath flickering lights. "This place survives because we work together," Ethan said firmly. "If people start killing each other, Wintergate dies." Nobody argued. Because everyone understood the truth. Outside these walls waited only ice and death. Slowly, Ethan created rules. Trade zones. Work shifts. Living sections. People who wanted larger rooms or safer heated areas had to exchange supplies or labor. Without realizing it, Ethan created something new. Property. Warm areas near the strongest thermal vents became valuable. Workers traded tools for better shelter space. Mechanics exchanged repair work for private rooms. People started saying things like, "That tunnel belongs to Nora's crew. Sam owns the generator section. Ben rented storage near the lower vents." Wintergate was no longer just a shelter. It was becoming a real settlement. Months later, the station had expanded far beyond the original mining tunnels. Metal walkways connected new underground chambers. Traders arrived carrying fuel, medicine, and machine parts. Some paid Ethan directly for safe land inside Wintergate. Others offered future profits. Ethan accepted carefully. He never forgot how dangerous people could become when money appeared. One evening, Nora approached him while snowstorms raged above the station. "You built all this from nothing," she said quietly. Ethan looked around the crowded tunnel halls. Children ran between workers carrying supplies. Warm lights reflected across metal walls. Voices filled the station with life. "I only wanted to survive," Ethan answered. Nora smiled slightly. "Well, now people want to stay." Food became harder to manage. Water systems needed expansion. Some newcomers fought over supplies and sleeping areas. One night, two smugglers nearly killed each other over thermal batteries. Ethan broke up the fight himself. Afterward, he gathered everyone inside the main tunnel hall. Nearly 40 people stood around him beneath flickering lights. "This place survives because we work together," Ethan said firmly. "If people start killing each other, Wintergate dies." Nobody argued. Because everyone understood the truth. Outside these walls waited only ice and death. Slowly, Ethan created rules. Trade zones. Work shifts. Living sections. People who wanted larger rooms or safer heated areas had to exchange supplies or labor. Without realizing it, Ethan created something new. Property. Warm areas near the strongest thermal vents became valuable. Workers traded tools for better shelter space. Mechanics exchanged repair work for private rooms. People started saying things like, "That tunnel belongs to Nora's crew. Sam owns the generator section. Ben rented storage near the lower vents." Wintergate was no longer just a shelter. It was becoming a real settlement. Months later, the station had expanded far beyond the original mining tunnels. Metal walkways connected new underground chambers. Traders arrived carrying fuel, medicine, and machine parts. Some paid Ethan directly for safe land inside Wintergate. Others offered future profits. Ethan accepted carefully. He never forgot how dangerous people could become when money appeared. One evening, Nora approached him while snowstorms raged above the station. "You built all this from nothing," she said quietly. Ethan looked around the crowded tunnel halls. Children ran between workers carrying supplies. Warm lights reflected across metal walls. Voices filled the station with life. "I only wanted to survive," Ethan answered. Nora smiled slightly. "Well, now people want to stay." Suddenly, warning alarms echoed through Wintergate. Everyone froze. Ben rushed into the room carrying a scanner tablet. "Unidentified ship entering the atmosphere," he said nervously. Ethan frowned. "What kind of ship?" Ben swallowed hard. "Military class." The entire station fell silent. Ethan walked toward the security screen near the tunnel entrance. Through heavy snow clouds, dark engine lights slowly descended from the sky above Frostfall 7. A large armored ship. Not damaged. Not lost. It had come there on purpose. And deep inside his gut, Ethan already knew who had finally found him. The massive ship hovered above Wintergate like a dark shadow in the storm. Its engines shook the icy mountains while blue light scanned the frozen surface below. Everyone inside the settlement watched silently through security screens. Fear spread quickly. People remembered stories about the Nova Dominion. Entire colonies had disappeared after refusing corporate control. Nobody wanted Wintergate to become another forgotten graveyard beneath the snow. Ben looked toward Ethan nervously. What do we do now? Ethan stayed calm, though his mind raced with danger. He studied the ship carefully. The markings on the hull confirmed his fears. Helix Extraction Corporation. One of the largest resource companies in the outer systems. That meant only one thing. They had discovered the thermal crystals beneath Frostfall 7. And companies like Helix never shared profit willingly. The ship finally landed several kilometers from Wintergate. Snowstorms covered most of the surface, but long-range scanners detected heavy vehicles moving across the ice. They're searching already, Sam muttered. Ethan crossed his arms quietly. No, he said. They're claiming. Within hours, a message arrived through Wintergate's old communication tower. This is Commander Ross of Helix Extraction Corporation. By order of the Nova Dominion, all resource activity on Frostfall 7 now belongs to Helix Corporation. Unauthorized occupation will be removed immediately. The message repeated twice before ending. Angry voices filled the station instantly. They can't do that. We built this place. They abandoned this world years ago. Ethan remained silent while the settlers argued around him. Deep inside, he knew this moment would come eventually. The galaxy only cared about Frostfall 7 now because money had finally appeared beneath the ice. Nora stepped beside him. What happens if they attack? Ethan looked toward the glowing tunnels of Wintergate. We make sure they can't take it. That night, Ethan searched through old Dominion data archives stored inside the mining station. Most files were damaged, but he kept digging through frozen records and abandoned legal systems. Hours passed. Then suddenly, he found something. Frontier Settlement Law 47. An old colonization rule created nearly 70 years earlier during the expansion era. The law stated that abandoned frontier territory could legally belong to anyone who survived there and developed permanent infrastructure without government support. Ethan stared at the screen carefully. The Dominion had officially classified Frostfall 7 as worthless years ago. That mistake now mattered. Wintergate existed because Ethan built it himself. Which meant the settlement could legally belong to him. A slow smile appeared on his face. The next morning, Ethan transmitted legal ownership documents directly to Helix Corporation. Hours later, Commander Ross himself arrived at Wintergate's outer gate with several armed guards. The commander was tall, cold-faced, and dressed in expensive thermal armor. Snow covered his boots as he stepped inside the station. His eyes widened slightly while looking around. Wintergate no longer resembled an abandoned mining tunnel. Heated corridors stretched deep underground. Workers repaired machines beside glowing thermal pipes. Trade booths lined the main halls. It looked like a real city beneath the ice. You built all this? Ross asked quietly. Ethan nodded. Every meter. Ross studied him carefully. You're still an exile. According to Frontier Law 47, Ethan replied calmly, I'm also the legal founder of this settlement. Ross's expression darkened instantly. That law is outdated. Still active, Ethan answered. For several seconds, silence filled the room. Ross finally stepped closer. You honestly think paperwork will stop corporations from taking this planet? Ethan looked directly into his eyes. No, he said quietly. But it will slow you down long enough for investors to notice. Ross frowned. What investors? Ethan smiled slightly. The ones already contacting me. That was the truth. News about Frostfall 7 spread quickly across the outer systems. Thermal crystals powerful enough to supply cities were worth fortunes. Traders, mining groups, and transport companies all wanted access. But Ethan controlled the safest thermal zones. And Wintergate was the only stable settlement on the planet. Suddenly, land on Frostfall 7 became valuable. Very valuable. Within weeks, ships from different systems began arriving daily. Some came carrying supplies. Others carried wealthy investors hoping to claim property near the underground heat zones. Wintergate exploded with growth. New tunnels were carved beneath the mountains. Large habitat domes connected to old mining shafts. Cargo elevators carried equipment deep underground while construction drones expanded the settlement non-stop. People traded everything now. Living space. Storage rooms. Energy rights. Mining access. Safe transport routes. Ethan organized the chaos carefully. Each new arrival had to register land claims through Wintergate's central system. Property near strong thermal vents cost more because those areas stayed naturally warm. Wealthy merchants paid huge amounts for protected zones close to trade halls. Mining crews rented tunnel sections for crystal drilling. Mechanics bought entire storage blocks to build repair businesses. Money flowed through Wintergate faster than anyone expected. Even old smugglers became rich simply by owning good tunnel space. One evening, Ben walked beside Ethan through the crowded central district. Months earlier, the tunnel had been dark and abandoned. Now bright lights filled the massive underground hall. Shops sold tools, clothes, machine parts, and heated food. Children laughed while workers carried supplies across metal bridges overhead. Ben shook his head in disbelief. This place used to be a frozen grave. Ethan looked around quietly. Now it's opportunity. The biggest surprise came from alien traders. At first, Frostfall 7 had only human settlers. But as Wintergate grew richer, merchants from distant systems arrived seeking business deals. Tall silver-skinned traders opened crystal export offices. Heavy armored mining clans rented deep tunnel sectors. Cargo pilots paid enormous docking fees just for safe shelter during storms. Wintergate became the center of frontier trade almost overnight. And Ethan became the man controlling it all. But success created enemies. Helix Corporation grew more aggressive each week. Their surface mining camps spread across nearby mountains, and armed patrols constantly watched Wintergate from a distance. Commander Ross returned often, offering larger deals every time. "We can make you rich," he told Ethan during one meeting. Ethan laughed softly. "I'm already rich." Ross's face hardened. "You think this settlement can survive without corporate protection?" Ethan pointed toward the crowded city around them. "It already has." The commander left angrily. After he disappeared, Nora approached Ethan near the upper balcony overlooking Wintergate's growing skyline. Huge underground towers now stretched upward through carved ice chambers. Blue thermal lights reflected beautifully across frozen walls. "You ever think about leaving?" Nora asked quietly. Ethan looked out across the city. This world was supposed to kill him. Instead, it gave him purpose. "Not anymore," he answered. Far above the settlement, storm clouds moved across the frozen sky. But hidden beneath the ice, Wintergate continued growing stronger every day. And across the outer systems, people whispered about the impossible city built by the exile who survived Frostfall 7. Wintergate had become too important for the Nova Dominion to ignore. Cargo ships arrived every hour. Crystal exports moved across the outer systems. Wealthy investors built private sectors beneath the ice, and trade routes connected Frostfall 7 to dozens of colonies. Ethan Reed had turned a frozen death world into the richest frontier settlement in the sector. And the Dominion hated him for it. One morning, warning alarms suddenly echoed through every level of Wintergate. People stopped moving. Workers looked up nervously from machines and trade booths while red emergency lights flashed across the underground city. Ben ran into the command room holding a scanner tablet. "Ships," he said breathlessly. "A lot of them." More than 30 military ships had entered orbit above Frostfall 7. Black war cruisers. Heavy transport carriers. Attack drones. The Nova Dominion had arrived. A transmission appeared across every public screen inside Wintergate. The face of Dominion Admiral Kane filled the display. His gray uniform looked perfect. His cold eyes showed no emotion. "Citizens of Frostfall 7, he said calmly, "this world now falls under official Dominion control. All property claims are revoked immediately. Any resistance will be treated as rebellion." Angry voices exploded across the city. "They can't do this. We built everything here. Fight them." Ethan stayed silent while listening carefully. Kane continued speaking. "Ethan Reed is ordered to surrender himself within 6 hours. Failure to comply will result in military action." The screen turned black. Wintergate suddenly felt very small. Nora looked toward Ethan carefully. "What now?" Ethan stared at the orbiting warships above the planet. "They think fear will make us run." Ben swallowed nervously. "And if we don't?" Ethan's eyes hardened. "Then they'll learn why humans survive places like this." Outside the city, Dominion forces began landing across the frozen surface. Heavy vehicles moved through snowstorms while soldiers built attack positions near the mountains surrounding Wintergate. The settlers prepared for war immediately. Engineers sealed outer tunnels with reinforced blast doors. Miners placed explosives beneath ice cliffs. Transport crews moved supplies into deeper underground sectors. Wintergate transformed overnight from a trade city into a fortress. But Ethan knew they could not win through direct fighting. The Dominion had more ships, more weapons, and thousands of trained soldiers. Wintergate needed the planet itself to become a weapon. Deep beneath the settlement, Ethan gathered his closest workers inside an old underground map chamber. The room contained ancient tunnel charts left behind by the original mining colony decades earlier. Ethan pointed towards several marked routes beneath the mountains. "These tunnels connect directly under Dominion landing zones," he explained. "Most of them are unstable." Sam understood immediately. "You want to collapse the ice above them?" Ethan nodded. "The storms already weakened surface movement. We hit them from below." The settlers moved quickly. Groups traveled through hidden tunnels carrying explosives and mining tools. Others used old thermal vents to travel beneath enemy patrols unnoticed. Above the surface, deadly blizzards covered everything in white chaos. Dominion troops struggled constantly against the freezing cold. Their vehicles froze overnight. Sensors failed during storms. Ice cracked beneath heavy machinery. But the settlers knew Frostfall 7 better than anyone. Because they survived it. The first attack happened during the third night. Dominion tanks crossed a frozen canyon while moving toward Wintergate's northern entrance. Then the ice exploded beneath them. Entire sections of the canyon collapsed instantly. Massive armored vehicles disappeared into frozen darkness while snowstorms buried survivors under heavy ice. At the same time, hidden tunnel fighters attacked Dominion supply lines across the mountains. Explosions lit up the frozen night. The planet itself seemed alive with resistance. Inside orbit, Admiral Kane grew furious. "Why are we losing ground against settlers?" he shouted at his officers. One nervous commander answered carefully. "They're using the environment against us, sir." Kane slammed his fist onto the control table. "Then burn the entire settlement down." The next morning, Dominion warships opened fire on Wintergate. Huge explosions shook the mountains. Ice cliffs shattered while parts of the upper city collapsed beneath bombardment. People screamed as emergency sirens filled underground halls. Ethan helped civilians evacuate deeper into the city while smoke spread through damaged sectors. For the first time since building Wintergate, fear appeared in his eyes. The Dominion would destroy everything if the war continued much longer. Then Sam arrived carrying an old data device recovered from ancient tunnels beneath the planet. "You need to see this," he said urgently. The device contained records from the original colony. But these were not mining reports. They were warnings. According to the files, explorers beneath Frostfall 7 had discovered ancient alien structures hidden below the thermal crystal fields. Massive machines. Planet-sized systems. The original colony accidentally activated part of the technology decades earlier before suddenly disappearing. Ethan stared at the maps carefully. One location stood out immediately. A deep underground chamber far below Wintergate. Without wasting time, Ethan gathered a small team and traveled through ancient tunnels beneath the city. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became. Eventually, they reached something impossible. A giant metallic structure hidden inside a massive underground cavern. Blue energy flowed across enormous machine towers stretching high into darkness. Strange symbols glowed softly along the walls. Nora looked around in shock. "What is this place?" Ethan stepped closer toward the center machine. "I think this planet was never supposed to stay frozen." The machine still carried power after centuries beneath the ice. Ancient controls slowly responded as Ethan activated nearby systems. The entire cavern began shaking. Deep humming sounds echoed through the underground chambers while blue energy spread across the walls like flowing water. Back above the surface, snowstorms suddenly changed direction. The ground trembled violently across Frostfall 7. Dominion ships detected massive heat increases beneath the planet. Admiral Kane frowned at the readings. Warm rain continued falling across Frostfall 7 for days. The endless storms that once covered the planet slowly disappeared. Thick clouds broke apart, allowing pale sunlight to shine across the icy mountains for the first time in centuries. People across Wintergate stood outside in silence, watching water flow through the frozen streets. Nobody had ever seen running rivers on Frostfall 7 before. Children laughed while touching rain with their hands. Workers removed heavy cold masks and stared upward at the bright sky above them. Even Ethan could hardly believe it. Just 1 year earlier, this planet had been nothing more than a frozen prison. Now it was changing into something alive. Deep underground, the ancient machine continued spreading heat through the planet's core. Thermal energy moved beneath the surface like a giant heartbeat waking after a long sleep. Ice melted across huge sections of land. Green plants slowly appeared near warm rivers and valleys. Small forests began growing around thermal zones. Fresh air replaced the dry frozen winds that once ruled the planet. Frostfall 7 was no longer a dead world. It was becoming paradise. But the Nova Dominion still refused to leave. Admiral Kane watched the changing planet from orbit with growing anger. Every hour, more systems across the galaxy learned about Frostfall 7's transformation. And every hour, Dominion control became weaker. Trade groups supported Wintergate openly now. Frontier colonies praised Ethan Reed for standing against corporate rule. Even some Dominion workers secretly admired him. Kane knew the truth. If Ethan won, other frontier worlds might rebel too. So the Dominion prepared one final attack. Large warships surrounded the planet while thousands of soldiers gathered near the surface. Their goal was simple. Destroy Wintergate completely. Inside the city, emergency alarms echoed once again through crowded streets and tunnels. But this time, fear did not spread. The settlers were ready. Wintergate had grown far beyond a mining station now. Massive towers rose beneath crystal-lit caverns. Defense systems protected the upper sectors. Trade ships filled underground docking bays every day. And most important of all, the people finally believed Frostfall 7 belonged to them. Ben stood beside Ethan inside the command center while large screens displayed enemy movement across the planet. "They're preparing orbital strikes," Ben warned. Nora crossed her arms nervously. "If those warships fire together, half the city could collapse." Ethan stayed calm. His eyes focused on the ancient control system connected to the underground machine. During the past weeks, engineers discovered the system controlled more than heat. Much more. The ancient builders had created planetary defense technology hidden beneath the ice. Huge energy towers slept deep underground, waiting for activation. Sam looked toward Ethan carefully. "You sure this will work?" Ethan answered quietly. "It has to." Far above the planet, Dominion warships moved into attack position. Admiral Kane gave the order immediately. "Destroy Wintergate." Bright lights flashed across the darkness of space as massive weapons charged. But before the ships could fire, the planet shook violently. Across Frostfall 7, giant towers suddenly rose from beneath melting ice fields. Ancient metal structures burst upward through mountains and frozen valleys while blue energy exploded into the sky. Dominion officers panicked instantly. Unknown energy signatures detected. Defensive systems activating. "It's coming from the surface." Huge beams of blue light fired from the ancient towers. One Dominion cruiser disappeared in a massive explosion above the atmosphere. Another ship lost power completely before crashing into distant mountains. The remaining fleet scattered in confusion. Inside Wintergate, people cheered loudly as the sky itself fought beside them. Ethan watched the battle quietly. The same planet once meant to kill him was now protecting everything he built. But Admiral Kane refused to retreat. His command ship descended lower through the atmosphere, preparing direct bombardment against Wintergate. "He's targeting the city personally," Nora shouted. Ethan quickly activated another defense sequence through the ancient controls. Outside, powerful storms suddenly formed around the command ship. Massive winds spun across the sky while freezing rain struck the vessel from every direction. The ship struggled to stabilize. Then giant streams of heated air erupted from nearby thermal vents beneath the mountains. The sudden pressure wave slammed directly into the Dominion flagship. The huge vessel lost control instantly. Everyone inside Wintergate watched as the massive warship crashed across the icy surface before exploding near the outer valleys. Silence filled the command center. Then cheering erupted louder than ever before. The Dominion fleet finally retreated from orbit. The war was over. Days later, news spread across every major system in the galaxy. The Nova Dominion had failed to take Frostfall 7. And Ethan Reed, the exile they once abandoned, had defeated them using the planet they called worthless. Everything changed after that. Trade exploded across the sector. Thousands of people traveled to Frostfall 7 hoping to start new lives. Construction crews built new cities beside warm rivers and green valleys. Property prices rose higher every month. Rich investors competed fiercely for land near thermal zones. Luxury towers appeared beside crystal lakes. Transport companies created permanent routes directly to Wintergate. He remembered what it felt like to stand alone in the snow while the galaxy abandoned him. So he created new laws for the planet. Any honest worker could own land. Any refugee could start over. Any exile deserved a second chance. Years later, Wintergate became a shining city beneath open skies instead of frozen tunnels. Green hills surrounded the outer districts while rivers flowed through beautiful new neighborhoods. Children played in parks where deadly ice storms once existed. Trade ships filled the skies every day. One evening, Ethan stood alone on the highest balcony of Wintergate Tower. Warm wind moved gently across the city below him. Bright lights stretched across the valleys while distant mountains glowed beneath sunset colors. Nora walked beside him quietly. You ever miss the old days? She asked with a small smile. Ethan laughed softly. The freezing tunnels. The broken generators. Almost dying every week. She smiled. When you say it like that, maybe not. For a moment, both of them looked out across the world together. The same galaxy that once treated Frostfall 7 like a graveyard now fought desperately for land there. And the man they once exiled had become the builder of an entire civilization. Ethan looked across the glowing cities proudly. Not because he became rich. Not because he defeated the Dominion. But because he proved something important. Human beings could survive anything. Even the coldest place in the galaxy could become home if someone refused to give up. And high above the valleys of Frostfall 7, the lights of Wintergate continued shining against the darkening sky.